Hey, what's up? It's Brandon Hilgeman, and I just got back from a preaching conference. And even though I've written books on preaching and I've been writing at propreacher.com about preaching for many years now, I'm always trying to soak up as much knowledge and as much wisdom as I can from other people, because preaching is something that takes a lifetime to master, and I don't even pretend to be the expert. I'm just somebody on the journey trying to learn and grow as much as I can along with you and sharing what I learned. So here's a few of the tips and a few of the big highlights and takeaways I had while I was soaking up what I could from this conference. Number one, clarity is kind. Think about that. Being clear in your preaching is kind. And if preaching is about loving God and loving people and taking a message from God because you love God so much and sharing that love with other people, then when we are clear in what we say, when we help people easily get from point A and follow us along in our preaching and our speaking till we get to point B, and we do it in a clear and easy way for them to understand, that's kind to them. That is a loving thing to do for your audience. It's mean to them. It makes it harder for them when we don't put in that extra work to be more clear, when we don't put in that extra work to make sure that our transitions in our sermon, that we're bringing them along with us. So be clear and be kind, and that is a way to love the people who are listening to you. Number two, pride is one of the biggest threats for a preacher. You're standing on stage in a position of power and in a position of honor, often raised up on a platform in front of an audience of many, many people. And that has a way of getting into your head and swelling you up with pride, thinking that somehow you are awesome, that everyone would want to come and hear every word that you care to speak to them. One of the speakers at the conference told the story of the triumphal entry of Jesus. And you know the story where Jesus rides into Jerusalem on the donkey and he gets the king's welcome, and people are waving the palm branches saying, "Hosanna," and they're welcoming Jesus triumphantly into the city. And the speaker said, hey, a lot of the times when we preach, we get this idea and put ourselves in the place of Jesus, riding in like we're the king who has come to deliver goodness to all the people. And we forget that what we really are is the donkey. Our job as the preachers is to carry Jesus to the people. Too many preachers put themselves in the place of the king, and they soak up all that praise and glory thinking it's for themselves, and they forget that they're just the donkey. Our job is to carry Jesus to the people. Bring his message to the people. It's not about us and our glory. It's about God and his glory. And we cannot forget that. But yet so many pastors, that pride comes before the fall. So many pastors let that swell them up, and they get a big head and they think that they can do no wrong. And that's when their ministry and their credibility as a speaker falls apart. Number three, growth is slow. A lot of us want to become a preacher or speaker, and we think that we could just jump up there and start doing it right away, and we want to just instantly be as good as these people that we've been watching who have been doing it for 30 years, and that just doesn't happen. We've got to stop comparing where we are now to where someone is on their journey 30 years ahead of us, right? Growth comes slow. You see, the way that God works isn't in the instant on-demand way that we see in our culture a lot today. Most of the time, the way God works in his economy, growth is more like fruit. You plant the seed and it takes time. It doesn't happen in a day or overnight. It slowly grows, and eventually you see the fruit, and eventually that fruit yields more fruit, and then you see an abundant harvest. But it takes time. So if you want to become a better preacher and a better speaker, you need to realize that it's not going to happen overnight. You can't just microwave your way to instant expertise in preaching. You have to take your time. It's going to take one sermon after the other, after the other, after the other. And eventually, as you keep going and as you keep practicing and you keep working on your skills and you keep seeking God and growing in your relationship with him, then you're slowly going to see that fruit. You're going to see that harvest come, and getting a little bit better every single day eventually yields a huge harvest. Number 4, joy is contagious. Now, this isn't something they taught at the conference necessarily, but it's something I noticed as I was observing and learning as much as I could. One of the cool things about this conference I went to is it was small enough where at the end of the conference, they gave some people an opportunity to get up on stage and to deliver something that they had prepared or something that they were working on, just a small portion of it. And one of the things I noticed, these were people who were at all different levels of experience. Some people who never got on stage, who rarely ever got an opportunity to speak, to people who've been doing it every single week for many, many years. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me between the people who really grabbed my attention and the people who, quite honestly, I had trouble focusing and paying attention to, was that the people who were more engaging, they just had this sense of joy about them. They were smiling. You could see it on their face. They were loving the stories that they were telling. They were excited about the content that they were sharing with other people. You could see that joy. You could see that passion and that excitement for the message that they were about to deliver. And this is something that I've been teaching and saying for a long time, is that you need to have that message so welled up deep inside of you, so absorbed into who you are, something that you are so passionate and excited and you just can't wait to just explode that out at everybody else. And when you have that sense about you, it makes your message so much more engaging. There were people who rarely ever got on stage who you could tell they were nervous and they were shaking and they were stumbling a little over their words, but they just had this joy on their face about the opportunity to share this message. And that made their message more powerful than the people who were more polished, but a little bit more dry in the way that they were delivering. So joy, it's contagious. You can't help, as somebody sitting in the crowd, to be more excited and to walk away from that message more joyful and make it more enjoyable when that speaker is excited and happy about the opportunity to do what they get to do. And the 5th thing that I took away from this conference is to speak from your scars, not your wounds. And this is important. A lot of times we share stories about some difficult times that we've gone through or some hard things that have happened in our life. These are sensitive stories, things that you wouldn't often tell someone when you first met them. But when you're up there speaking, you're up there preaching, you're being vulnerable and you're opening up your chest to let people see who you are and the things you've been through. So when you tell stories about your scars, it's very good and it's very helpful. It can be a great illustration for your sermon. But when you talk about your wounds, and by that I mean things that are too fresh, things that just happened to you. So if you get up on stage and you preach a sermon about something that just happened maybe just a year or a few months or even 2 years ago, and you haven't had the time to really process that, you haven't had the time to really deal with those hurts and those pains and those struggles, and you're still or in the middle of it, when you open up and show your wounds to people, rather than them being able to relate to you and say, yes, I can understand, I'm going through something like that right now. Instead, they're going to see that fresh wound and they're going to come running to your rescue. They're going to want to help you. They're going to feel bad for you. And all of a sudden, you are now in the way of the message. People are more concerned about you and about the fact that you obviously are still hurt from this. You obviously are still dealing with this and haven't fully processed it yet. They're going to so much more want to rush to try to help you that they're not going to be as affected and helped by the message you're trying to get across. So when you open up a wound and show them a wound of yours, rather than something that's healed, that's a scar, you actually are hurting the effectiveness of the message rather than using your story as an example to how God has helped you overcome these things. Your job is to deliver what He wants you to say and not to stand in the way of it and become the focus of the entire sermon. And so when you deliver those messages that are too fresh, you got to be careful, because people will focus so much on that story that they won't see the rest and the greater story of what God has done and what God is doing and what God could do in them if they are going through a similar circumstance or experiencing something like that. So there it is. Those are some of the things that I took away from this conference, and I really hope that you got something out of it too. I'm always trying to keep learning, and I hope you are too. That's kind of the point of what I'm doing here. I want to keep learning. I want to keep sharing what I learned, and I would love to hear from you. What are some of the things that you've learned? What are some of the best preaching tips that you've heard? Those are some of the things that I'm learning, some of the things that I'm working on. I'm not the expert. I'm just a fellow person on the journey, and I would love to hear what you have to say too. Till next time, keep on preaching.